So when I firmly decided why I was running for president, I knew there were some complicated issues I needed to present. So I grabbed a camera and I called my good friend Chuck Myron to help me talk it out. This video is the first part where we talk about the nature of the problems, and the second part coming up is where we talk about a solution.
So Jeff, why? What's the impetus for this campaign? Why did you decide to run for president?
Well, that's really the big question. Right now, we're at kind of an interesting point right now where the official launch of the campaign is a couple days away. And a lot of things are happening in the world. Now that I'm looking at it happening, I'm really sort of going back and looking at my original reasons for doing this. We've been out for the last couple of months, and we've been talking to a lot of people, particularly in the Muslim community, about the idea for this project. And, the main way that we've been pitching it is we've been pitching it as a media project because, of course, the idea of me running for president seriously seems kind of funny to a lot of people with good reason. It doesn't seem likely that someone can just pop out of left field 6 months before the election and actually really even make an impact on the election as much as the possibility of actually even winning. And going back and looking at why I decided to do this, really it comes down to having a vision for what the future of humanity is all about. And that vision leads me to believe that we're at a really important crossroads in history right now. Not just with what's happening in the election, and not just with the very stark choice that we see between someone like Donald Trump, who represents one extreme, and someone like Hillary Clinton, who represents an extreme of the establishment. But globally, I honestly believe that right now, for the first time since World War II, we're in a very precarious position where we're actually looking at the real potential for another global war. And so what's driving this campaign is not just going out and talking about the idea of talking about the issues, but actually being able to prevent the war from happening outright, or being able to prevent and mitigate the worst possible consequences, and having real leadership for this country, which I think is something that's lacking from both candidates out there.
What are the factors that could lead to this war?
The big issue that we have right now is that the international system, the post-World War II order, has completely collapsed over the last few years. And we can go back and we can look at the changes that happened in the 90s when the Soviet Union collapsed, when Europe started to come together. Those were positive changes. And then particularly the turning point, I think, where it really started to go bad for us was after the September 11th attacks, the reaction of the Bush administration and the idea that of American exceptionalism, that because this country stood for the ideals of freedom and democracy, we could go out there and we could do whatever we wanted against the rest of the world's wishes. And unfortunately, not only was the invasion of Iraq a huge disaster for the Iraqi people and for the region, it also set off a sequence of events where if we're going out there and representing the idea of American exceptionalism, why not Russian exceptionalism? Why not European exceptionalism? Why not Chinese exceptionalism? And so that started the breakdown of the order. And then we have the Soviet invasion first of Georgia in 2007. Pause there, because I'm not sure if that's the right date or not. And then the Russians, feeling like they weren't equal partners in the process, a lot of old specters of Russia's history came back to haunt them in a very ugly way. And you saw Putin, who initially seemed to start off as very much of a reformer, turned more and more into a dictator. And first we had the invasion of the invasion of Crimea, which they completely denied was happening, and then the invasion of Ukraine. And more importantly, the biggest driving factor of, I think, what's pushing the world to war is the situation in the Middle East. The Arab Spring was an amazing opportunity, and nobody had any doubt that there was going to be a lot of backlash. And unfortunately, what happened is, in most of the countries where the tyrants held sway, the democratic reformers didn't have much of a chance. We saw that happen in Egypt, and the worst case scenario is what we saw happen in Syria. And the situation in Syria demanded that the international community respond in a responsible way, and that response never came. We had Russia and Iran backing the Assad regime after he brutally repressed the democratic movement and began to commit one atrocity after another, one crime against humanity after another. And where we really needed to see the leadership was from the United States and from Europe, and that never came through. With President Obama, I agree with him on so many issues, but this is one major area where he and I part ways, and it's a really significant problem. This situation demanded U.S. intervention. We should have got involved, not necessarily with a full-scale invasion, but we should have got involved early, and we had the perfect opportunity when Assad used chemical weapons against his own people. That gave us a legitimate reason to get more involved. And the one thing that has to happen there is we have to get rid of this tyrant. And we haven't done so, and it's had a cascade effect of destabilizing the entire region. It's destabilized Lebanon, it's made relations with Iran more complicated, it's destabilized Iraq. The millions of refugees that are pouring out of this conflict zone are causing problems in Jordan, and particularly it's destabilized Turkey. And everything that we've done by refusing to get directly involved in Syria, we've made the situation in the region that much worse. We decided we didn't want to put boots on the ground, so we use ethnic and religious militias, which only divide the country further. We didn't want to back the moderate opposition to give them a chance, a fighting chance against the Assad regime. And in that power vacuum, first Al-Qaeda, and then the Islamic State and all the other Islamist organizations have come in and filled that vacuum where we refuse to get involved. So the situation in Syria has created not just an Islamist terrorist threat, which everyone seems to be focusing on now, but more importantly, it's created a regional conflict between Iran and its backers and its supporters and Hezbollah, and Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states. It's become a proxy war between the two factions. And that has had a ripple effect out into the global environment. The refugees that are pouring into Europe are destabilizing the European Union. And into all of this, we have President Putin, who is playing this game not to have a negotiated settlement to win. President Putin is backing Assad. And President Putin also sees, I believe, in this an opportunity to permanently cripple NATO and the European Union. And I think that's a strategy.
So what would that look like? How could he permanently cripple NATO and the European Union?
Well, there's two fronts to this conflict. The first is on NATO's southern front, which is the vulnerability of Turkey. Turkey is having some internal problems with President Erdogan, who is becoming more and more like a dictator and cracking down on freedom of speech. And what's driving that in no small part is the security threat that Turkey is facing. And they're facing it from the Islamists and the Islamic State and other associated groups, and also from the PKK and the Kurdish resistance, which has been a problem in the region for a long time. The Kurds should have had a state of their own, but the way the colonialists divided up the Middle East, that didn't happen. And so the Kurds have faced an injustice. Unfortunately, the PKK has used terrorist tactics in Turkey and against the Turkish people. And when we were backing the Kurdish opposition against, not against Assad, but against the Islamic State, because we didn't want to send in U.S. or NATO troops, the Kurds that we were supporting also supported the PKK, and that emboldened the PKK, and there had been relative peace between the PKK and the Turkish government, and they were moving towards reconciliation. And that, combined with some of the political things that were going on from Erdogan's party, that rekindled the conflict. And from that, Turkey has been the most outspoken critic of Assad. And that put them on a collision course with Russia. And when Turkey shot down the Russian fighter jet that strayed into its territory, that started what could become a major conflict between a NATO country and Russia. And those tensions really aren't subsiding. They're only getting worse. The security situation in Turkey is getting worse. And the Russian involvement in Syria is getting more and more involved, despite what they're telling people.
Well, how does this become...
Hi, how you doing?
Hello, how you doing?
Good.
So how does this become more than just a Turkish problem? Obviously, with the NATO alliance, that's there. But how does this become, more than just a local conflict?
Well, number one, the NATO issue, the founding principle of NATO is that when you attack one nation, you attack every nation. And Russia has been successful with a doctrine that some people are calling hybrid warfare, which is a combination of conventional warfare tactics, unconventional tactics, and media and diplomatic destabilization efforts. And the danger is that Russia is using the Syria conflict, and particularly the refugee issue, to create a wedge between Turkey and the rest of the European Union and the rest of NATO. And if Russia can split away Turkey from NATO, then he's effectively discredited NATO. Now, the other front is the Eastern European front. Russia has become more and more aggressive, particularly around the Baltic region and Poland. And Russia has already invaded the Ukraine. And Russia's economy is suffering as a result of the economic sanctions that the U.S. and that Europe have put against them. And unfortunately, that creates a situation where Putin's entire popularity has become based more and more on the fact that he's a strong man. And corruption has completely overwhelmed, I think, Putin's government at this point. And so the only way for Putin to not just move Russia forward, but to survive, is to continually be more and more aggressive.
So how do you stop that? How you talk about direct involvement. What does that look like?
That's the challenge. And this gets back to the question of why am I running for office? When I talk to people that have so far supported this campaign, again, the pitch is that we were looking at this as a media project, and hopefully that we could go out there and we could make our voices heard to the major parties. Now, it was important for me to start with the Muslim community. I'm a Muslim myself, of course, and I feel that, not only has the community been unfairly represented, I think in a lot of media, but particularly the ugly, xenophobic, racist hate attacks that have come from the Republican Party targeted against the Muslim community, it makes it important for us to speak out as a community, because it's not just a question of protecting the Muslim community here in America, it's also a question of making the rest of the country realize that if they can divide us against each other, if they can come after the Muslim community, then there's not a single other community in this country that they're not able to come after. Once you let that fear and that hatred and that anger find voice, once you let that extremism get out there, you can't bottle it back up. And if they're coming after the Muslims today, they're going to be coming after somebody else tomorrow, and then somebody else after that. So it's important for everybody to realize in this country that the issues of the Muslim community faces are the same issues that everybody else in this country faces. And it's not just a question of civil rights, it's not just a question of unfair representation. People in the Muslim community are concerned about economic issues, they're concerned about getting an education for themselves and for their kids. We're concerned we're Americans like everybody else, and we're concerned about the same issues. So when I originally pitched this project, that was the angle that we wanted to go with, is that we wanted to represent the Muslim community, and we wanted to start with the Muslim community and hopefully get everybody more engaged in the process and speak for ourselves. Now, the issue that I'm coming up against is, as I'm seeing how this election is coming down, and I'm seeing the breakdown of the talks over Syria, and I'm seeing Russia getting more and more aggressive, and I'm seeing just the international order falling apart. And a large part of that is not just because of the geopolitical problems. It's also because of the huge issues of the inequities, global inequities putting on the situation, is putting on the global system. And also we're starting to see pressures from climate change that are affecting everything as well. And the pace that we're backsliding away from a model of human rights, a model of democracy. In every part of the globe right now, we're seeing human rights slipping, including the United States. In every part of the globe right now, with a few notable exceptions, instead of democracy moving forward and becoming more popular, we're starting to see democracy backslide. And my concern is that the pace that this is happening is quicker than what the system can respond to. And I look at the two candidates that are out there right now, and with Hillary Clinton, we see someone who is, for both good and bad, the embodiment of the system itself. And then we see someone like Donald Trump, who I think a lot of people who are supporting him have very legitimate concerns about what's happening in this country and realize that the system doesn't represent them. And unfortunately, the Trump campaign is using the old fascist playbook to play on people's fears and divide the American people against each other, and to divide America against some alien other, and that's not going to work. So those are the two possibilities that we have in this campaign right now. And I don't.
You ended that.
Perfectly.
I just wanted to stop you there.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned you're talking about Hillary and you're talking about Trump.
Mm-hmm.
I remember you saying at one point that Trump was playing directly into Putin's hands. Why? What is he doing that is playing into his hands, and you know what does that mean?
Well, the biggest problem with Trump, aside from the fact that he's playing on people's fears and hatreds, is the fact that he is geopolitically ignorant. Honestly, you know, he sees everything through the filter of a real estate mogul, and he doesn't understand the complexities of what's going on in the world. And he has spoken frequently, quite glowingly, about Vladimir Putin, and he thinks that they would get along great. And it's interesting, Hillary Clinton made the same mistake. I think, to be fair, a lot of us did. We hoped for reconciliation at the beginning of the Obama administration after things had gone so bad with the Bush administration. And unfortunately, I think by that time, relations had soured too much, and Putin was on a course towards becoming, you know, an autocrat, becoming a dictator. That didn't work out. But Trump is talking about making the same exact mistake. And not only is he talking about making that same exact mistake, even worse, there are people within Trump's campaign team who have worked directly with some of Putin's cronies and who are unabashedly pro-Putin, pro-Russian. And you combine that with the xenophobic fears that they're spreading about Islam and about the Islamic world, and this isolationist trend. And what you have in Putin is what you have in Trump is you have the perfect patsy for Putin. You have somebody who doesn't understand what's going on, but thinks that Putin is a great guy and wants to withdraw in all the places that the Russians want to advance.
So Putin, I mean, he could really, you know, with a guy like Trump in office, I mean, he could really play him for a fool. He could play for the U.S. for a fool.
Absolutely. You know, and that's Putin, whatever his other failings are, I would say that, you know, if we look at back in the Cold War days, you know, what we used to call the Great Game, unfortunately, that's still very much a reality, and nobody is playing that game right now better than Putin is.
Well, what about Hillary? How would the Putin-Hillary dynamic work?
I think, you know, the problem with Hillary Clinton is, you know, everybody talks about how qualified she is for office, and that is absolutely true. She understands the situation, I think, better than most Americans do. And would say that she's in the top handful of people who understand what's going on globally.
And better than Trump.
Absolutely better than Trump. The problem with Hillary Clinton is that she is a product of the problem with Hillary Clinton is that she is a product of the system that has created the problems that we have right now. And she is not just a product of that system, but she is front and center of how that system works. She's a leader of that system. And so we can't expect that things are going to get better just because we choose the lesser of two evils. I think Hillary Clinton is smart enough to know what needs to be done, but I don't think Hillary Clinton has the leadership potential to move America away from where the system has put us right now.
That's as good a stopping point as any.
Yeah.
Okay.
A little bit longer.
Okay.